A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing beside her, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour the disciple took her into his home. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise be to you, Lord Jesus Christ. In the introduction of his book on Mary, the Mother of God, Scott Hahn, a Protestant convert, tells a story about his youth that I can easily relate to. He was 15 years old and described himself as feeling very cool as a teenager. One day during school, he felt sick, and so his teacher sent him to the school nurse, and the nurse, after taking his temperature, told him to lie down while she phoned his mother to come and pick him up. Scott felt instant relief at the idea of going home, and he dozed off to sleep. When he awoke, he heard his mother's voice in the other room talking with the nurse. When she walked into the room and saw him lying on the bed, she exclaimed, "Oh, my little baby boy." He felt embarrassed. I mean, while he was her child, little baby boy was not who this 15-year-old boy wanted to be at that moment. So littleness and neediness was definitely not cool for his age. And suddenly he realized, my mother is going to be taking me home. What if my friends see her leading me out of the school and putting her arms around me? I'll be the laughing stock of my class. All he could imagine was a long and unbearable future as a mama's boy. With that, he sat up and faced his mother and said, "Mom, do you think that you could walk ahead of me when we go out of the nurse's office? I don't want my friends to see you taking me home." His mother didn't say a word. She turned and she walked out of the nurse's office, out of the school, and straight to her car. She waited for him to get in and close the door. Then she compassionately asked him how he felt and continued to mother him the rest of the way home. When he got home, she made sure he went to bed with all the usual remedies that a mother offers a sick child. So relieved was he that he was able to avoid this embarrassment and maintain his cool status, Scott drifted off to sleep in an almost perfect peace. That night, his father visited him in his room to see how he was feeling, and Scott told his father he was feeling much better. Then his father looked at him and said, "Scott, I'm happy you're feeling better. I'd just like to ask you one favor. Don't ever be ashamed to be seen with your mother." No further explanation was needed. As he thought about it, Scott realized that his father was right. There was really no reason for him to ever be ashamed of his mother. As Jesus lay dying on the cross, his last will and testament was to leave us his mother. How I wish more Catholics would take Mary into their homes, as is implied by what John did after Jesus died. I wish more Catholic families would pray to Mary as a family, thereby fulfilling that New Testament prophecy that all generations will call me blessed. But unfortunately, far from calling her blessed, it seems that there are just too many Catholics who live their lives without calling on Mary at all. They seem content to have a mother who prays for them, but they prefer that she'd stay out of sight while others are around who just won't understand her role in their life. In this book by Scott Hahn, he acknowledges that while he was a Protestant, he was guilty of not only neglecting his own mother, but Mary, the Mother of God, as well. He was anti-Mary. He recalls his earliest encounter with a Marian devotion came about when his grandmother died. She was the only Catholic on either side of his family, and since he was the only religious person in the family next to her, his father gave him all her religious articles when she died. And he was horrified to see what these religious articles were. One of those articles was a rosary. He actually took his grandmother's rosary in his hands and ripped it apart, saying, "God, set my grandmother free from the chains of Catholicism that have bound her." Because he truly believed that the rosary and the Virgin Mary were obstacles between his grandmother and Jesus Christ. Even as he was slowly being drawn into the Catholic faith, drawn by the truth of one doctrine after another, he could not bring himself to accept the Church's teaching on Mary. It was only when he decided to let himself be her son did he come to accept and to truly believe in her maternal love. And how did he allow himself to be her son? One day, he just took up a rosary and began to pray. It was as simple as that. He prayed to Mary for a very personal and seemingly impossible intention. The next day, he took up the beads again. And the next day, and the next. Months went by before he suddenly realized that his intention, this seemingly impossible situation, had been reversed since the first day he prayed the rosary. His petition had been granted. At that moment of awareness, he knew his mother. Just as St. Augustine, after he opened the scriptures and read the short passage from St. Paul, knew that at that very moment that he had no further need to question God's love for him. So Scott Hahn, at that moment in praying the rosary, knew that Jesus, who taught him to pray, "Our Father," had also led him to behold his mother. At the end of his book, Hail, Holy Queen, Scott Hahn writes, "When it comes to explaining Mary, having a lot more love is more important than having a lot of answers." Having a lot of love is more important than having a lot of answers. When we come up lacking, she'll make up for our deficiencies as only a mother can do. We should never be embarrassed to acknowledge Mary as our mother.